Hello there. Welcome to episode 5 of Bow and Blade, a podcast brought to you by medievalists.net, your home for all things medieval on the internet. Bow and Blade gives you a seat at the bar as scholars of medieval warfare go beyond the Wikipedia articles to talk about the debates and questions that we're working on today. My name is Michael Livingston, professor at the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina.
And my name is Kelly DeVries, professor of history at Loyola University of Maryland.
So what are you drinking tonight at the bar, man?
Well, one of my favorite movies is The Thin Man. It has nothing to do about medieval, but a great movie. And there's one time he comes in and he sees what his wife's drinking, and she's ahead of him. So he says, "I want to start here and go to here. Just fill them up with scotch, and I'll go through them to catch up." I don't feel like that, but I think maybe a drinking game today. Put shots in front of me. Every question we think is a good one, drink. Every question we think is a bad one, drink twice. We'll get through them eventually.
That we will. Like mine's here. I'm doing whiskey as well, though I'm doing an old fashioned. It's my favorite drink. You know this. Most anybody who's hung out with me knows this. And also on Twitter, Guy Gabriel K, who's an amazing writer, actually shared a recipe of a wonderful sounding old fashioned, and I was like, well, there you go. I gotta do that. So it's his fault. I blame him. I blame you, sir, wherever you are.
That's right.
It looked too good. So
although I was with you last weekend, you did have an old fashioned.
Of course I did.
Yeah, you did have an old fashioned. I went with straight gin martini.
You did.
And it was stirred.
It was stirred, but it looked good. I mean, for that sort of thing.
It was tasty.
I wonder what old fashioned was better.
I wonder when you're in the Middle Ages, what did you think was old fashioned? I mean, did you look back in time and say
some sort of swill?
Yeah, before the mead was found, we had to drink, a fermented mare's milk or something. I've often wondered, history of alcohol. After to do history of war, we can do the history of alcohol.
By trial and error, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we do warfare by getting in the fields, and this would mean having to get in, here at the bar.
We do not dress in armor and go out and fight each other.
No, I would win
at a bar, and that is our medieval warfare.
Yeah. So as Kelly kind of hinted there, this is a special episode. Last week we asked you, our loyal listeners, what questions did you have for us to answer in our first ever Bow and Blade Q&A, and you responded with some outstanding questions.
Really good.
Some great stuff. And so first of all, like let's not stop this train rolling. Like, you can keep throwing questions at the Patreon page. We'll keep track of them. And every 5 episodes or whatever, we'll do a Q&A and see what we got. And you might hear your name called out on Bow and Blade. We don't have T-shirts to give out, anything like that. We'll work on that.
And believe it or not, I mean, if you have a different opinion, we want to hear that too. Avoid the expletives. We'll just fill them in. Just put like brackets, and we'll fill them in. But send the questions, send the comments. We're not always right. 98, something like that. But
I have been wrong 9 times in my life, and I'm really hoping not to hit double digits. But
or worse, cubed.
Yeah. All right. So let's start them off. I'm going to go through these here, man. We'll go back and forth on answering them, obviously. But I'll put you on the seat first. As first respondent here.
Okay.
Alex Percival. First of all, badass name.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
Alex Percival asks, which medieval monarch would you most like to live under, and which would you least like to live under? And he also notes you cannot answer Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah. Yeah, Vlad the Impaler was, I actually wouldn't have thought about him, because for every Vlad the Impaler, there were like 1,900 Vlad the Impalers elsewhere. It's just he gets a little more famous because of the vampire stuff that gets made up in the 19th century and so forth.
I mean, wasn't
No,
a good guy.
I mean, if you didn't mind being impaled, what the hell, you know? It's always funny in the Vlad the Impaler one that you get these sources, and the German sources are all, oh, we can't believe this guy's impaling all these people. The Pope says, well, he'd be okay if he didn't impale the people. Pius II actually writes about him and says, he's an okay ruler. He's keeping the Turks at the door and so forth. There's this impaling thing we don't really like. And the Russian sources are all, everybody impales. Come on.
Tuesdays, am I right? Tuesdays are rough. Come on.
He's rough. A lot to choose from. Not the many good ones to choose from.
Yeah, this was a hard one.
I was listening every time I started to make this list after I was working with this. The questions came in, we did a little research, and this one was kind of like go throughout history. I'm going, geez, okay, he's good. No, he's bad. No, he's bad. No, he's bad. So I'm going to go to the bad one first. And I'm going to shock everybody.
Okay.
But I did bring it up at the recent Southeast Medieval Association meeting. They all know deep in my heart and actually every fiber of my body, I detest Richard the Lionheart. I detest him.
I saw this coming. We don't know each other's answers.
No, we don't know each other. But you can guess.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny because, I said this to the seamen. There's always people who look like, seriously? And I go, I mean, what did Richard do what made him a good king? He died, and John was the worst king. So that actually made him popular. So we got a Richard II, also not a great king, and then got a Richard III, also not a great king.
Yeah,
no Richard IV coming.
It shouldn't be ever be a fourth.
There is only a John the Only, because he is probably the worst king in the Middle Ages. But I got to say, worst king, Richard the Lionheart. Guys, he loses.
Yeah.
Loses. Third Crusade. He may have won a couple of battles. He does not go into Jerusalem. Saladin kicks his ass. He takes Acre. Okay, that's a nice little thing. And then he then takes the Duke of Austria's flags and throws them on the ground, which will get him later captured. I mean, the guy is what my students would call just a big goof.
Well, and he's just a weird ass bully and stuff. And, Siege of Acre. I mean, like the slaughter there. I mean, he's a bad guy. I actually I've got a book on Crecy coming out next year, and I actually have in it. I think it's like Richard the Asshole. Yeah. And I'm not sure if they're going to let me keep that in or not, but I felt strong about it.
It's coming out with Osprey in their British press. The English have this fondness for Richard I don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have to understand about Henry VIII. We now look at the Booker Prize and say, you mean it wasn't on Henry VIII? Yeah. Everybody loves the Tudors, and I'm thinking, this is like the worst run dynasty in world history, the Tudors.
So Richard's your bad one.
Richard's my bad one. What about yours?
So I was going to say John Lackland because he's worse than
Richard.
With that.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, but I also I would have to definitely give a special shout out to Timur and Genghis Khan. I mean, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near these people.
Yeah.
Timur with his, I want to be like Genghis Khan. What did he do? How many did he kill?
Well, I mean,
hold my beer.
Timur, we're talking about Tamerlane here.
Tamerlane,
Timur the Lame, and he was. They opened his coffin, and he did have a broken leg from birth, congenital problem. But he's said to have built a pyramid of 55,000 skulls coming out of Delhi, because those were the number of carts he had that were carrying away booty.
Yeah.
And that was it. Tamerlane, yes. Seen in Kazakhstan, believe it or not, as a national hero.
Isn't that
weird?
Weird?
Like Vlad in Romania, but.
Yeah, it's just are you guys kidding? Really? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but my answer, I was like, well, I could also say, but yeah, John Lackland, because I figured you would say John Lackland. So I was like, well, what's my backup going to be?
Yeah.
And it would have been Timur.
Well, Tamerlane, I think Tamerlane's if we're talking about most evil guys on earth, Richard's just stupid. I mean, he's just a big goof. He's not particularly Stephen Runciman used to say, well, he was a terrible father. He was a terrible, and go down the list, terrible king, terrible. And then he said, but he was a great general. And I'm thinking, no, he wasn't even that. He wasn't. Sorry, Saladin kept his army in between Richards, and Saladin can lose a few men at Arsuf and lost the last battle that they played. Both those could be counted as victories. But if whoever Saladin loses, he can replace. Richard's got to wait for them to come over. And then as soon as he loses all his allies, because he's an asshole and nobody will stick around with him, he doesn't get into Jerusalem. If you're looking down on the city while your troops are going through as tourists, 5 at a time, that's really the definition of defeated. And that's what he did.
But he's not evil. I don't think he's evil the way
he's not evil. I mean, Tamerlane is just there's nothing he does. He probably got up and peed on somebody because that was the evil thing to do.
He's a bad dude.
Yeah. The evidence for me on Tamerlane, I think, is when Bayezid I is captured after the Battle of in 1403, Battle of Adrianople, 1403, and he's captured and he's kept in a cage, and then finally bashes his head in against the bars of the cage, running his head in the bars of the cage. Can you imagine what it would have brought an Ottoman who the Ottoman sultans believed very firmly that suicide was that would go immediately to hell, and he did not do that. I mean, he committed suicide rather than continue the disgrace of being carried around in that cage. So that certainly got to show something,
Yeah.
I do wonder. There's legend that said that Tamerlane had over his tomb that if you ever open this, the world will cease to exist. Now they did open it. It hasn't ceased to exist. But the irony of that is it was opened by German archaeologists the day before Hitler launched his attack into Poland.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's it. Now,
go figure.
That may be an embellishment. Certainly, the Germans opening it didn't go, oh, we better open it now because tomorrow's too late.
Yeah,
Hitler will have already started things going. But the fact that it was German archaeologists who were looking at Tamerlane's corpse and opening the sarcophagus for the first time.
Yeah,
but it's still there. I mean, the sarcophagus is still there.
So who's your good one? Out of all the bad ones, which is the worst bad one?
This was harder. I think this is harder. I mean, when we're only talking about medieval leaders here, so we can exclude some that are given goodness and piousness. Louis the Pious was not particularly pious, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Charlemagne. I think that everybody seemed to be fairly profitable as long as you weren't Saxon.
I was going to say there's some people that would have a different opinion because he was coming and killing them.
Yeah. And he does do a lot of non-Catholic people in, but he expands his empire, brings prosperity, there's a lot of peace. Nobody attacks him. And so except for maybe those 10 guys in the wagon train coming out of Spain.
Song of Roland, Roncesvalles Pass.
And we do know that at least that aspect of the Song of Roland is right. There is a wagon train coming out. So, and it
does get hit. I mean, that does happen.
But if
the cleaving of dudes from the top of their helmet to the spine of the horse in a single blow probably didn't happen.
No, it probably didn't happen.
Yeah. I'm feeling like that's probably not accurate, but
and Roland blowing the horn so hard that his brains ooze out of his ears.
Tuesdays, I'm telling you, Tuesdays are hard, man.
Well, yeah. I mean, a tiny embellishment there, possibly. Yeah. The one thing I'm thinking is, the likelihood of me being a knight or upperclassman is pretty, slim. Let's face it. If the odds on be going back to, I made the statement this past week that getting medieval on somebody's ass is giving them a plow and some seeds and telling them to go out and farm. Or joining a monastery, which would have been probably where you and me would have ended up in some monastery counting things and drawing pictures or
Just
something.
sitting around.
Yeah,
like, oh my God.
what do you do with smart guys? You either kill them or you make them go in a monastery.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been a knight. And if that's the case, where are you going to go that's got the safest regime? Well, do a farm in central France during Carolingian period, or up around Aachen or Saint-Riquier. We love Saint-Riquier up around there. If you're
Yeah.
a monk in Saint-Riquier, well, that's with the exception of the fact then the Vikings come in. So don't live too long past Charlemagne.
Right. You gotta get right in that period. I'd say that's not a bad answer. I would not have. I wouldn't have answered Charlemagne. That's.
You sticking with the English kings?
I wasn't going to. If I had to pick an English king, I'd probably be something like Henry VII. Things were pretty chill.
Dingy.
It's chill, like, pretty stable between fires.
Yeah. Doesn't have a lot of great pretension.
Yeah. It's just kind of like we're just getting along. We're just getting along, getting through the day. Mm-hmm. And in the end, that's pretty legit for the Middle Ages. We're just getting along through the day. But I was gonna say, if who would I want to live under? I thought of, like, not necessarily me personally, but as if I was part of the culture.
Yeah.
Who would I want to be under? And I think, like Suleiman the Magnificent. Just the opulence, the extraordinary, like, interculturalism, like, just what that world would have been like to live in.
Yeah. If you could be, especially if you could be a courtier or an.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, just because you don't really even see it done justice, even like in Hollywood, because there's not enough movies that depict that stuff. No. And it's such a cool period.
Oh yeah.
So beautiful. So just so much culture happening. And, as long as on the right side of things, on the right side of things, it would be sweet. I could get into that.
Is, we think about some of those, you have to think in this, because we're doing this military history podcast. I mean, quite frankly, I was looking at Charlemagne as a safe location to be a peasant, right. Safe location to be a monk. If I was a soldier, William the Conqueror's army would have been great. Because you've got an inspiring leader. You've got somebody who's going to give you lots of land and other things he's conquering over in England, despite the fact that it's too bloody cold over there if you're from Normandy, and they don't have decent Calvados. Otherwise it'll be pretty good time. I think it would have been a very interesting time to be a soldier under Suleiman, except for the fact that he kept losing so many.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't want to be a soldier in that army. No.
Yeah, 30,000 in Belgrade, 103,000 at Rhodes, 35,000 at Vienna, and that's only his first 8 years.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be.
I'm not so sure
soldier,
there.
No.
What really gets my heart when I'm thinking about these things, we've gone on. This is such a fun question, and it wouldn't be under it. So I'm stretching this notion of ruler. Okay. I would have liked to have been a knight fighting at Rhodes in 1480, the show we did last week. Because Pierre d'Aubusson is just marvelous, and he is so inspiring. And so that would have been a great leader to fight under. And because you were fighting behind the walls and killing a lot on the other side, but you're fighting behind the walls, you got a lot of protection too. Hospitallers, once Templars are gone and everything else, Hospitallers are the badass boys in the block.
Yeah, they're fun. They're fun. Well, all right, we could go on about this for hours, but I'm pretty sure other people want their questions answered as well. So
sure.
So I'm going to move us on to the next one.
And I'm sure the questioner of this one is saying, "I only said one."
He's like, "Shut up." Richard Scott Noakes asks, "Howdy, Richard. What are some events in the history of medieval warfare that you think are overlooked for their long-term importance, either because the event itself is little known or because a well-known event had consequences that are not commonly understood?"
I love this question, and I'm going to punt this to you first. I answer the other one first. You go with this
one. So I'm going to totally show my cards here and my self-interest. I can't help but do that in a case like this. So I came down to two things.
Okay.
One was the Siege of Rome, which I think is really
Which
cool.
siege?
The 1359, 1360.
Okay.
Over the winter there. I just because I think it's like this amazing. Chaucer is there as a teenager. He gets captured. He may be where he picks up all kinds of French stuff that then he's able to bring back. Really informs his career as a poet. I mean, this event, this weird occasion, which I don't know. I've said this to Chaucer scholars, like, what? He was captured, but yeah, he was captured. He was imprisoned by the French, and he gets ransomed. The king ransoms him out. He's a teenager at the time. He's probably 19 years old. I mean, that itself to me is like, not something that gets talked about very much, but could have been very interesting. Not to mention the change of what from the Treaty of London to the Treaty of Brittany, which is a pretty significant difference.
Yeah.
So there's some cool stuff there. And sieges in general don't get as much credit as they should, which you'll hear us say a lot on this podcast. Everybody's all about the battles. Sieges are legit. But in the end, I can only say just one.
Okay, well, actually, I'm not going to say one.
I still haven't said mine, Kelly. I still haven't said it.
Okay, I'm going to do an event.
I still haven't said mine.
I really think what really changes everything in 14th, 15th century. I'll start this out. This isn't the event I'm talking about, but
so you're not going to let me say mine,
huh?
You're not going to let me say mine?
I thought you just did.
No.
Sorry.
I said I thought about doing this.
Oh, my mistake. So you are going to do two. And then
no, I'm gonna say that I'm not going to do the one. And then I'm gonna do the one.
Foul.
That I only did what? What?
That's foul.
Not.
Go ahead. Do two.
The Battle of Shrewsbury.
Yeah. Okay.
The Battle of Shrewsbury, and the Battle of Shrewsbury because I'm writing a book. See, I'm showing my cards. I'm writing a book on this. I think the Battle of Shrewsbury, when 16-year-old future Henry V takes an arrow 6 inches deep into his head, and for weeks has to suffer before this thing is extracted out of his skull. I think that the trauma of that changes that young man. I think how the young man who walked onto the field of battle at Shrewsbury and Henry V at Agincourt are absolutely different people because of that event and everything that happens in the Agincourt campaign. In fact, probably the campaign itself, the existence of the campaign, is tied to that moment of that arrow hitting him in the head. And most people don't talk about it.
No,
and so that's mine.
They don't talk about why he did that or what he did in the battle with that arrow in the head. I mean,
oh my God, turning the flank,
turns the line. He's in, his cavalry that he's leading. He does not falter. He turns the line and envelops them between his army and his father's, and that's the end of the battle. So,
yeah, I mean, at that moment, right? So the right line of the royalist forces of his father's army is collapsing. It's going into rout, and Hotspur comes charging down at them. He's going to rush him off the field. This is it. And in the moment of all that, with an arrow in his skull, in his head, on the far left of the line, young Prince Hal is like, "I'm not leaving the field. Instead, we're charging." Turns the entire line. Yeah, wipes them out. Ah, my God, changes everything. That's mine. What do you got?
I'll say we're going to do Agincourt later. We'll come to it. We'll talk a little more about that. We'll probably do Shrewsbury as well because they're both very important battles for what they mean. I honestly think that Henry's judgment is damaged when that is affected too, because honestly, the French should have just crushed him on the Agincourt campaign. Almost everything he does, except for probably Harfleur, which he surprises the French. But almost everything he does, the march across Normandy, the Battle of Agincourt, he should not have been allowed to do, or he should have been defeated. And you wonder, would someone who was completely in their element, completely thinking about military tactics and strategy, have done what Henry did without damage to his brain or his skull. I think the trauma was incredible, and it does make a lot of difference in the years following, let alone on the battlefield. Good one.
Woo, good one.
So I am going to. I think I'm going to talk about a campaign because the event is the campaign. But just to give it a little bit of background, a little bit of the setting is, I think some of the most important people in the history of warfare, medieval warfare, are the four Burgundian dukes of Valois dukes. They go from Philip the Bold, John the Fearless, Philip the Good, and Charles the Fearless, or Charles the Rash. Depends on how you want to translate that. The campaign, I mean, each one of those did. I mean, John the Fearless's Civil War, his war against the Liégeois. I think the war against the Liégeois is really important for John's development. We actually have an account of the Battle of Othé, which he had fought in, and that's sort of important. So I'm going to use the Liégeois, but not that campaign, which is very important. But the campaign I want to focus on is the campaign that Charles fights. The successful campaign that Charles the Rash fights against the Liégeois rebellions in 1467, 69. Amazing conflict, amazing violence. Probably the only thing that's successful in there. There's two major battles, including the Battle of Brustem, but what he does, the town of Dinant, which is, if you've never been to Dinant, Belgium, it's amazing. You can really get a look at it because there's only 3 streets. It's next to a mountain, and it was a great defense by the Dinantais of the militia there, and so much so that legend has, or not just legends, in the histories, that the master gunner who was defending this town from gunfire was taken to the top of the hill and thrown down onto the church, which is 500 feet down. A certain death, but that was a death that everybody could see. And also then took 500 of the citizens, 500 of the militia, tied their arms together and threw them in the Meuse River. But what's really fascinating is you can see a part of the walls up around Bouvines, which is what was captured by Charles before he went and besieged Dinant, 1468. And that may have been 1467. But I've been able to, so we know where the walls were and where some of the cannon shot was. And we know, in fact, where it hits. And I found the remnants of the monastery where it hits. And so we've actually got a distance of what Charles's gunpowder arsenal, the best in the world at that point, gunpowder arsenal did in this. And then he moves against Liège and just massacres the city. Because the Liégeois had rebelled. Liège was, in fact, controlled by the Prince Bishop of Liège, but they kicked him out. He was one of Charles's friends, and so he goes in and just destroy Liège. There's no remnant of Liège that still exists. I mean, he flattened that city, and then he starts losing after that.
Yeah, I was going to say, that all starts really well, but it goes to pot really quick.
Yeah.
I figured you were going to say something right in here, man. I figured you were going to say the Battle of Othé.
Yeah, well, the Battle of Othé is an impressive one. We should get back to it. It's one of these old style battles. In fact, we'll come up with one of our questions today, and I'll bring Othé into it again. John the Fearless coming back out of the defeat of Nicopolis is very important, and this is the first battle he's fought. The Liégeois in that case have almost taken Maastricht, which you know well. The walls.
I love Maastricht.
Yeah, not the old walls, not where D'Artagnan falls.
Yeah,
but if you're in Maastricht, you've got to go see the real D'Artagnan's monument. But the walls that they attacked in 1406 and 07, the Liégeois attacks there, we have a really good account of those walls and being attacked. They're still there, and you can study that. and it's the Liégeois who are using their guns. So we're talking about militias and using their guns against the Burgundian-held Maastrichters. That's an interesting one. And the Battle of Othé then finishes that off. The Liégeois puts it all, they kind of play all in, and then it's John goes. There's an interesting one. I mean, John the Fearless then goes on and has this amazing civil war in France. All in the, we talked about Louis Orleans last 2 weeks ago, and he fights in the Burgundian and Armagnac Civil War. He fights right down the middle and huge conquest down all the way down to Beauvais and into Paris. Really, by the time he's done, he's in Paris. So that, I mean, each one of these could be studied quite a bit. Philip the Goods, his fight against, once he pulls out of Hundred Years' War, his fight against the Guentinars and against the Low Countries. There's a little place on the Meuse River up on a mountain called Poil Vache, which is a little tiny village, had a mint. I've got a coin from it.
Look, you were giving me crap about doing
I know.
And now you're like on like your third like friggin' king. You're like whatever.
Yeah.
No, I'm
the Burgundian. We'll just say Burgundians fighting their wars against the Low Countries.
Richard Scott Noakes, I'd love to hear from you. Do you think that this counts as an event
in
the history of warfare?
If I had to say a single event in all of that, it would be the siege of Dinant. And the brutality that Charles uses after that siege. But it's just a very interesting, and it's really massively used gunpowder weapons from both sides.
And Dinant is gorgeous.
Dinant is gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
And it's also, Joseph Sax was born there. Saxophone exists only because Dinant is there. But if anybody of you are in southern Belgium, eastern Belgium, go to Dinant. It's on the Meuse River, wonderful restaurants. The 18th century Citadel up there is fascinating. But there was a medieval castle, but the church is still there, and so it's got some medieval remnants to it. And plus, you can see how big the Meuse River was and what it would have been like to have 500 people tied back to back and thrown in the river. They wouldn't have survived.
Yeah, so. It was bad. It was bad. All right, so okay, this Dinant. There's the event.
There's the event. Yeah, Dinant.
Ryan Burgess. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Ryan.
Ryan Burgess asks, do we know definitively that Henry I of England actually ordered his knights to dismount at the Battle of Tinchebrai? This is in 1106. And if so, why did he do so? What was the motivation? What tactical strategy was he pursuing that the dismount order realized? Is it as simple as leveraging a superior number of infantry? And do we have any eyewitness accounts of the battle? Yeah. Good question, Ryan.
It is a good question. First one directed at something specific. I mean, I do think we have it extended a little bit and talk about dismounting of knights some. Let's just talk about this battle. We do have two eyewitness accounts. So Davis found them in the Bodleian Library, published them in English Historical Review in 1909. It's the fourth issue of that year. So if you got
contemporary,
you can get it.
They're contemporary.
They're contemporary.
Yeah. I don't know. One of them
appears to be a letter either written by the king or on the king's behalf.
Right. But the other is a monk from Fécamp.
Yeah,
and he's probably getting it secondhand.
Maybe, although Fécamp is so close, if he's traveling with the army as a chaplain or whatever, he would have been. But that would be interesting because if he's traveling from Fécamp, he could be on either side. And he could have been on either side, but he is probably writing it after this is settled. A little tiny bit of context here. Henry Richard. Okay, one step back. William the Conqueror, trying to decide that trying to make sure that his sons won't fight over the inheritance, gives his eldest son Robert Curthose, Robert of Normandy, and he gives his second son William Rufus. Doesn't give his third son squat, and his third son Henry I wants it all. And so he's already received England by an arrow going into the skull of his brother on a hunting expedition, and
Whoops.
probably was an accident. Probably
Whoops.
was, but he gets England that way.
Tuesdays.
And then Robert comes back from the crusade with all these papal promises that they would not lose their lands, and he comes back and Henry is usurping his lands, and he's only been back about 5 years when he finally gets enough favor in Normandy, and Henry goes back and forth between England and Normandy. He finally gets enough to fight against him, and in response from Henry, he's besieging Tinchebrai, which is probably part of the answer. He's besieging a castle, and the castle is set on a hill. So his troops are next to the castle, and the troops coming to relieve the castle. And I would love to see this. I will confess I have not been to Tinchebrai. I've been to Fécamp, and you would see something there. But almost all the castles built around this time are major things and somewhat elevated. So it could have been too steep to use his cavalry and therefore dismount him. I think he did dismount him. From the original sources, the contemporary sources, it appears that the numbers are wildly different, but they all say the milites. So we shouldn't say knights. Yeah. The cavalry were dismounted and joined the infantry, or at least joined the infantry, and that they held off the charges of the other infantry, and then had a response foot charge of their own that turns.
Yeah, and part of the reason that this is I think subject to question, maybe the reason that this is coming up, is the Norman mode of fighting is I think kind of popularly understood.
Yes.
To be on horseback. That's not an exclusive sort of thing. Like this is not, Normans don't always fight a certain way. One of the things that we find in warfare generally, right, is that if you're going to be any good at it, you don't only have one way of doing things, because the terrain, the situation often doesn't allow you to do that thing. And if you're like, well, we only do it this way, well, okay, there's only limited situations in which you can actually engage in warfare. So this idea that they're Norman quote unquote knights, which they're not really, but that they're Norman knights, so therefore they must be mounted, therefore they must be fighting that way. That's not really reality. As Kelly says, there's no reason not to think that they're dismounted. I mean, the contemporary sources say they are. Like, there's no reason to lie about that. So, I mean, can we say definitively that? I mean, not without a time machine, but pretty high likelihood.
We've got to remember, this is the time that the earliest illustrations of the couching lance are even being seen. There's none in Bay tapestry that can be definitively said of couching the lance. So when you're talking about the charges that William the Conqueror's making to Hastings, he's making them from the flat land going up the hill. So it's not a situation where the horses are coming down a hill. It's much harder for a horse to come down a hill and not break its legs than it is to go up a hill. And because just think about which end the head is on of a horse. And if they go up the hill, they can see what they're going up. If they're coming down a hill, they can't necessarily see what's happening on the rear. They don't have like a tail man on the end that's swinging like a big hook and ladder truck. But the other thing, so couch lance was not probably being used as a regular tactic. That's going to change the way cavalry warfare is going to be done after this time. But the other thing is just because you have a horse doesn't necessarily mean that you use it in battle. It can be a transportation device. The one thing we can be certain of is that men are more likely to stand together in a line than horses are. And so this will probably get the comments. I want you to see 3 films. No, I'm not going to make you watch the whole of them. Just 3.
Certain scenes.
Just the scenes. But watch the scene in Blade Runner of the cavalry charge, and one of the horses actually had to go down. He was in front of the group, and the rider had to take him down because of going to go straight into the spears that are being held out there. The fact is that line isn't straight. The horse line isn't straight. The Kingdom of Heaven charge that's supposed to be at Jacob's Ford, but is out in the middle of the desert. Of course, they go from a column to a line to a column. I mean, Ridley's got them doing weird things out there. But again, the straightness, when they go out to a line, there's no straight. The big one is Henry V, Laurence Olivier one, because they did that on a golf course. So they picked the easiest terrain to ride across. And if you listen to them, I mean, it's like 3-minute charge across at Agincourt, and you listen to the wranglers because they can still be heard. Keep the line, keep the line, keep the line. And you look at that line, it's not kept because horses will run out ahead of something. It doesn't matter how much you can hold them back. Doesn't matter how much you train them. They will get in the adrenaline and one will be out ahead of the other. There's never a solid line that could be made. But men, you just say, okay, here, put your shields over each other, or stand next to your brother, or something like that. And
you don't even hardly need to say it to the men. I mean, you instinctively want to be close packed, and there's a safety in that. This is part of the reason why sort of massed groups of infantry go back basically as far as we can see in the military record, because this is what naturally sort of happens to people. But yeah, as Kelly's saying, this does not happen with animals. Animals don't behave that way, and especially they don't behave that way. I mean, you can maybe train with enough work, maybe if nothing is happening, to kind of line up pretty good.
Oh yeah, and if you've got a long way to go, you start
getting. Yeah. We're in the middle of a battle, like things are flying, people are falling, people are dying. If there's arrows incoming, it's a mess. It's a mess. Cavalry charges do not occur in straight lines, pretty much ever.
Yeah, and a lot of historians will compare this battle to the Battle of the Standard, which is within a 20-year period of it. And the Battle of the Standards, the men stay on horse. Why do they stay on horse? Because it's effective. They rush the infantry, and the Irish say, yeah, we're gone. So, if you've got a big, huge honking horse coming at you, that the expense of that, the man on top and the expense of the armor is coming down on you. You start questioning whether you really want to lose your life for whatever cause Joe, equally well-dressed and equally rich up on the end of the line, is telling you to stand in a straight line. The thing is that I think it's not really at this point, because William the Conqueror is almost an anomaly for what he does. But by the time we get around to the end of the 13th century, beginning of the 14th century, you see the things like Battle of Campaldino in Italy, which we're going to talk about with our friend Niccolo Caponi in a few weeks. The cavalry charge there is it's stopped by the infantry. The cavalry charge at Courtrai is stopped by infantry. Cavalry charge at Bannockburn is stopped by infantry. The cavalry charge at Lappin is stopped by infantry. So all these early 14th century battles, Crecy being the English learning finally to say, okay, well, let's dismount. These early battles, the cavalry do not defeat the infantry, because you've got a solid group of infantry. Horses are not going to go through them. They're going to go aside. I mean, horses don't play football, Mike.
Yeah, we actually have a question coming up here that actually addresses just this. That addresses just this question. So I'm going to go ahead and well, do you want to say anything?
No, that's a good place. We can segue on to the other question.
Because I want to jump this next one. I do want to say just really quickly. I mean, like with Tenchebray, neither Kelly nor myself have been there, and I'm a firm believer that a battle is its ground, and I get really wary of getting too far into the weeds without having been there. So if the people of Tenchebray wish to put together enough money to bring Kelly and I out, we will come. We will do that for you.
We'll write a book on Tenchebray.
Yeah, we will do that for you.
If they want a book, we'll write a book on Tenchebray.
I just want to make sure people are aware.
Bring us over.
The good people of Tenchebray.
Yeah.
I hope you have I hope we got some good wine.
Yeah.
Is also part of it, but you should. So we're fine. We're good. So yeah, related to this question of cavalry and such, Ian Duncan asks, how was the knightly cavalry charge used in battle? Manuscripts show clashing lines of horses. And it gives an example in the Morgan Picture Bible.
Yeah.
And Hollywood loves to show mounted men at arms crashing through infantry lines, but more modern sources, like say the Napoleonic era, indicate that horses really don't like charging a wall of horse or infantry. I've always had a hard time reconciling these seemingly conflicting uses, and I was hoping you could give some insight into medieval cavalry's use as shock troops versus headlong charges at massed infantry.
Yeah. Yeah,
This is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, this is exactly the question that I mean they link very well, because it's what Henry does at Tinchebrai is essentially what what happens for a lot of armies once they start hitting into the 14th century, is start meeting these infantry militias. Actually, at Courtrai, all militias at Bannockburn, Scots, the peasant. I mean, Scots were throwing anybody into arms at Bannockburn. And so what the English will learn is let's dismount, and that works at Agincourt. It works crazy. It works at Agincourt. It works at Poitiers. No big cavalry charges, any of those. And the reason is that if you've got a solid group of a disciplined group of men who can stay solidly, the horses are not going to run into. And this is why the shield wall was there. Potentially, this is why a solid, men, legion, phalanx, if we go back to the ancient period, those are hard to beat, because the horses don't go, they won't try to penetrate. They cannot get through. And so all of a sudden the horses stop. I mean, this is exactly what happened. They back up at Courtrai. They back up, and the ditches have been filled. Filled the field. So they back into the ditches and then fall. And also, subsequent charges, as they found out in Agincourt, subsequent charges have to go over fallen men and horses, let alone the water-filled field, which is making it bad anyway. So
now this isn't to say, obviously we're not suggesting that mounted troops are not used, because they are used, but it's far more likely that they'd be used in these as a shock troop when you don't have forces already gathered up and in nice formation. That's tough to hit. But while things are fluid, or once things become fluid, once a route is on, trying to prevent organization of troops, that is when cavalry troops are fantastic. That is when you can get in, and the horses now, there's enough space where they're hopefully not going to shy away, and you're going to be able to get in and absolutely obliterate people on foot.
And ultimately, going all the way back to the ancient world, this is why cavalry was used, is that it is a fearsome opponent to face. And you won't, most battles are until the other guy runs away. So if they are not willing to take on the power of a horse or a man on top of the horse, if you can afford the horse, he's also affording a great deal of armor. That'll scare a lot of armies away, and everybody uses the scare tactics. There are cavalry charges that work. Falkirk has one that works, but then there's a lot that don't. And it's interesting when you look at something like at Courtrai in 1302 or Nicopolis 1396, and both of those, the ideal means of trying to attack would be infantry. And Crécy has the same thing. The ideal thing is to attack as infantry, and the French knights say we don't want to lose the glory, and then they're going to lose their lives, which is kind of lose the glory.
I mean, obviously you got the ranged weapons, the longbow there, is also making a difference in what's happening.
Yeah, although not at Crécy or at Nicopolis. I mean, not at Courtrai or Nicopolis. In that case, it's just the man. The field.
Yeah, it's Crécy where the longbow is, again, sort of like this idea of kind of mass charge. If you're firing arrows into these horses, the horses go mad. This is what our accounts of Crécy are really, some of them quite dramatic and amazing. talking about the just terror of the horses and the chaos of, I mean, a horse is a huge animal. And if you've ever ridden a horse, the moment that animal is at all out of control, it is absolutely frightening. I've been on a horse that got stung, and bolted into the trees, and like just trying to get the control of this thing without myself being killed or something, or killing somebody else, because just the madness of that. And this can happen no matter how well trained, how how nice the situation is for you. So
the horses
yeah.
are surviving. Well, we're talking about horses. One of our favorite things to mention around when we're talking about horses is there are no horse graves, guys. Put that out of your mind. No one buried horses after. We got this.
That's a deep hole you got.
Yeah, that was crazy. Where did you find the horse graves? You'll be no. I mean, the horses are lying dead on the battlefield. They're no good to anyone except for the peasants around there. They all show up with their sharp knives, and they eat well for the next year. We can promise. We've got 8,000 horses, which is what we think might have been fallen at Crécy. Northern France, Picardy, Artois.
They were living it on horse meat.
Well.
Lots of horse meat and lots of horse skin. Look at all this leather. I mean, it was just Yahtzee.
It was. And I've had horse steak. It is nice, tasty. Now we'll get.
I've only had a horse burger. It was not good. It was not good. It was awful.
Next time we're in Belgium,
they told me it was horse meat. Maybe it was another kind of meat, but it was kind of near a war zone. Long story. And they're like, "Oh, it's because we don't have any, so it's just horse." I was like, "Oh, that's why it sucks."
Yeah. Next time we're in Belgium, dude, horse steak and frieten.
I'll just take the frieten. Is what I'm gonna do. And give me that warm mayonnaise. Like, I'm going native. I'm gonna love it.
Drink, by the way. I'm drinking.
drink up. Gonna go to Belgium this summer, actually. Hopefully. Yeah. All right. Lee Churtle asks. Okay. This is how he starts this one. I like that Lee's like, all right, okay, settle down.
Yeah.
Settle down, you two. What is their opinion about practical weapon and armor tests? I know some people argue that since the iron and steel available in reasonable amounts does not match in terms of production or impurities, historical examples, modern tests present an invalid comparison. On the other hand, I think that normal experimental archaeological standards make useful comparisons possible. As long as you get the thicknesses right, follow the sources and surviving examples, and do as much of the materials as contemporary-like as possible, I think you'll be in the ballpark. After all, physics is the same. Oh,
physics is the same. Let me just tell you. So back in the good old days when Spike TV was taking all of us off to see the Deadliest Warriors, Knight versus the Pirate, the Viking versus the Ninja, Joan of Arc versus William the Conqueror. I mean,
the good old days.
Things, and by the way, the Pirate would never beat the medieval Knight. No way in the world. Spike, you got that one wrong.
Yeah. False.
I was consulting for them, and there was a couple of things. They said, well, Joan of Arc and William the Conqueror, and they said, Joan of Arc, what was different? She said, well, she had a lot better armor than William did. And so they said, well, then would she have won? And I said, no. And they said, why? And I said, because she's a girl and William's a really well-experienced warrior who probably could have killed her with one blow, no matter what the armor that she's wearing. And she would have had to get through his armor. So, yeah, no. It was a little bit preposterous that they were even asking that. But the other one that was kind of fascinating is, and this was based on experiments the Royal Armies had when I was there for a year, and National Science Foundation gave me some money to go over and work with Bob Douglas Smith, and we were working on cannons at the time. But one of the experiments they did is they actually recreated a moving dummy. So they used this forensic plastic
The
that everybody
gel,
uses.
yeah, and all that.
And then, but they dressed them in armor, they dressed them in mail, and then they moved it because almost everybody uses these stayed targets. No man is a stayed target.
Right.
Everybody's moving, and especially with mail, because you're going to see overlapping of the rings and so forth and so on. It's going to be very difficult to get into them. And in fact, the only weapon that burst the ring, everybody is all, oh, burst the rings. The only weapon that did was a steel crossbow. So, you've got a pull of 300 to 600
That'll
pounds.
do it.
And yeah, the bolt did go right through everything.
Yeah.
But even the longbow arrow, it curled up like a pig's tail.
Yeah.
But the big thing was when they took the axe and the sword and hit the dummy. And these were the reenactors at the Royal Armouries. They're very fit, certainly mimicking a medieval soldier. And they had followed everything. I mean, all the guidelines to make sure these were accurate tests. Unfortunately, never been published. And they couldn't break anything. They couldn't get through the rings with a heavy hit on the bow or on a sword or an axe. So when I was doing this with Spike, and I said, oh, no. I mean, I'm sure that is the case. I'm sure we've been told the rings would blow apart. And I said, well, just try it. So they did the exact same thing, forensic dumbing, put mail on it. But this time, they literally took what were those fighters, not a wrestler, but, the super fighter, one can use knees, right? Anyway, a big guy. We'll just say a big guy. And he took a whack at this, not with the power of the reenactors, but with the power of a man who was got 260 pounds and no fat in there. And it almost blew the whole dummy off, but did not break a ring. And they had him take, and he was absolutely shocked. And the producers were absolutely shocked. Over and over and over again, they tried, and they could not bring a ring.
I mean, the blunt force trauma would have been bad.
But, underneath, I mean, ribs would have broken. The guy would have died. There's no question if you get hit like that. But the armor was incredibly protective. So I'm a little bit worried because we get some. I mean, Mike Lodes does a lot of these and weapons. His weapons shows. He wants to penetrate I think he penetrates on the longbow. He penetrates a piece of metal on wood with nothing in between them and the wood not moving, and it goes in a quarter of an inch. And he turns close. See, now that's a problem. Quarter of an inch wouldn't hurt me. Yeah, so I'm a little bit worried about these sort of things.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what you're hearing is Kelly saying, and this is very much what I would be in agreement with. Yes and no. This can be great, and also has lots of limitations. Yeah. So if you're not reproducing the actual use, in the case of chain, right, that it's going to be moving, it's going to be, it has this padding by it. Like, all of this is intrinsic to it. It's not supposed to be just stretched out and nailed on a piece of wood and then you shoot at it. Like, that's not how you wear that. That's not how it functions. Then those are going to be really, really bad. And it doesn't matter. Well, but look, I'm pulling the bow correctly. Like, what the hell? That doesn't matter here. What matters is the armor is not being used correctly. At the same time, some of the things that we can get out of experimental archaeology, to use that term that's become very, very popular. I'm always a little uneasy about that term, but okay, all right, like, we're going to just make that up. So experimental archaeology, some of it's incredibly useful. Daniel Jacquet, putting on plate mail.
Yeah, Daniel's YouTube videos.
If you haven't seen plate mail, I can't believe I just said plate mail. That's D&D days, man. D&D. I'm a paladin.
Well, so you can't drink now. That's it.
So he made the plate near as he could to spec. Again, we're never going to be able to get it totally right. We're not. But it's damn good. Puts it on and runs an obstacle course, timing it with a I guess a firefighter. It's a firefighter, and an army. I think it's an army guy, in all their kit, right? Yeah. So we're all wearing our kit. We're all soldiers. Well, the firefighter's not a soldier, but you got all your kit. let's run an obstacle course. Let's see how fast we go. Let's see how nimble we are. And it's amazing to watch, right? Because we can read in our sources, God, these knights are really active, and Hollywood seems to show them kind of lumbering around. Yeah, because the lumbering around is not how it works. You put on armor, it actually has all this. You can move in it.
Yeah.
Look at Daniel run. Look at him jump. That's amazing. So things like that are incredible. There's a wonderful YouTube. I haven't watched all the shows, so I can't speak to all of it. But um, Todd's Workshop is what it's called. Todd's Workshop, and they've got some terrific videos on trying to figure out how you use weapons, and it's not here's how I think it would look cool, which is very often what we get from these things as well. I think it would look cool if you did this to the stores, so that's what they do. No, he's like, okay, here's a bow, there's a target, which way works best? And there's a magnificent video he does, which I think is actually centered on Agincourt. What's his name? Is the commentator on it? Toby.
Oh, Toby Capwell.
Yeah, Toby Capwell comes on and does commentator for it.
The curator of Arms and Armor at the Wallace Collection.
Yeah,
and former tournament champ.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. And so Toby comes, and what they're doing is they're shooting at a breastplate with a longbow, trying to see if they can penetrate this thing. And what they keep finding is no, not really. I don't think the arrows just shatter. Yeah. But what it does show is how badly the arrows shatter, and that actually what you're getting is a lot of maiming and a lot of killing and all this stuff from the shrapnel.
Before the shrapnel,
arrows.
Yeah,
I mean it's not shrapnel, but it's like it's just it's all these splinters and these sharp things just flying everywhere because it's shattering the breastplate, and actually shows why you had certain aspects of the plate that are there to help get this stuff that's probably blowing apart away from the face, away from the eyes. Yeah. That is so terrific to me, so terrific. But it gets it can get a little sketchy in some other stuff. But I'm a huge fan of people experimenting.
Yeah.
Huge fan. Just like we just got to keep it reasonable.
Yeah.
In what we're doing to what we think is real.
What Daniel is doing with the armor, I mean, I think that showing how flexible it is. There's nobody better, especially when he's about 20 years older than the guys he competes against. And in Armoury, he beats the soldier, who's 20 years older or 20 years younger than him. And Toby, absolutely. Toby discovered, for example, that the saddle that is that's with Henry V relic, so it's not his probably, in the Tower of, or in the Westminster Abbey, he recreated that and found that, in fact, it made jousting and made riding into battle a lot easier. And that was really, really effective. So, and WTS Tarver, Ted Slazewski, before he published on WTS Tarver with a traction trebuchet. If you look up the article in Technology Culture, because he will tell you, look, we're limited because we have to use treated wood. We're limited because we have to use an iron or a steel trigger mechanism. But this is what we're finding in our results. We're seeing how much pull is needed and what happens to the trebuchet bow, trebuchet wood, the bow as a bows and so forth. That was really effective. And the people at the medieval center, the Middle Altert Centret in Nykøbing, Denmark, they are trying trying to find using medieval sulfur and saltpeter made in the old way to try to recreate gunpowder. I've discovered a lot of gunpowder does work, maybe not to optimum. So there are some people who are very conscious of it, and then there are others who say, I can throw a piano with my trebuchet, and they didn't throw pianos with trebuchets.
Yeah, that's cute. And there's always look, there's always kind of doubt on this stuff. Um, Leon asking this question, says trying to make, comparisons to our historical examples. Well, I mean, that's great. That's great. How representative are our historical examples?
Yeah.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, what percentage of, I don't know, 14th century helms has survived? Like, it's really a small percentage,
Mhm.
a very small percentage. So yeah, we can sort of try and recreate this helm. How representative really is that helm to what's happening at Crecy
Yeah.
or wherever? There's a lot of kind of, and we have to sort of just jump and make an assumption.
Yeah.
But we do also have to remember, look, that is a huge assumption. Like, swords acted this way. Well, the ones that are kind of made near as we can, like the one that we have, but the one we have was like buried with this king. Like, that probably was a really nice one
Yeah.
compared to the one that I would be using. So how representative is it? There's a lot of
A
questions like
lot.
that we have when we really get down to the nitty gritty, that that most people kind of like don't like to talk about, because it kind of can undermine the whole process.
Yeah, and
Um,
the best thing and the final really important thing is if you are taking part in some of these, it can be a lot of fun. It can be educational too. Can't go in with a preconceived thesis. So the London War
yeah,
boat trials were really good, except those guys had a preconceived thesis and they proved it. Well, geez, what a if they hadn't, and as soon as I started seeing some flaws in some of the methodology you pointed out. Whereas, for example, Grott's Armory did some with 17th century guns and real uh, plates from 17th century with no preconceived notion, and found some really amazing things that they didn't expect, like how powerful early pistols were.
right. Yeah. So again, we're not saying like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's great. We learn incredible things from this process. We just are always very kind of hesitant, and I think frankly we both get a lot of people writing us,
Oh,
that,
huge number.
oh, I did this in my gym wearing pads, fighting with my
Yeah.
buddies, and so this is how it worked, right? And I'm
Yeah.
usually like,
I could cut a ham in half with my sword, so that means they were sharp.
yeah. So we just got to be careful, is what we're saying. But
Keep doing
thumbs
them. We're
up to.
learning from them. We'll
Oh
criticize
yeah,
them, but
yeah.
it's also a hell of a lot of fun to take part in them. I
Oh
dressed
my
in
God,
armor. Yeah, the Royal Armouries put me in the armor
man,
based on
I'm
Henry
so
VIII
jealous,
suit.
man.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun.
I'm, I'm giving a talk for the Royal Armories. Shout out to myself here. A plug on December 1st, I think it is, on Brunenburg, and I'm really enormously mad that I'm not giving it in the Royal
Yeah.
Armories. I'm doing it by Zoom, so which is nice in that people wherever they are can stream. It's free. Just register. You can stream. It sucks though, because I was fully planning on trying to like leverage somehow, like, will y'all let me play with some artifacts when I'm giving a speech here? Like, can I do that? And it's not going to happen because
Yeah.
I'm too far away,
Well, I
because I'm
mean,
jealous of
I
you.
was there at a really good time. I was able to dress in armor. Funny thing about the lower cannons, which is the shin guards, did not fit on my legs. Not because my legs were particular. I mean, the rest of me was just barely fitting into the armor that mimicked Henry VIII's armor. But the cannons on the shins didn't go around my calves. And one of the things I discovered is all of the cannons, all these lower pieces, they're not built for calves like we have now. Evidently, they didn't run. They didn't ride a bicycle, which I'd been doing in Boston the year before for a whole year. And yeah, so I had big calves. They couldn't put that on. But the rest of it really taught me a lot. Uh, but they did. And the biggest thing it taught me is it took two people to put armor on.
Yeah.
So that teaches a lot when you're talking about Chaucer's Army in the Night or the Night in Army in Sir Gawain.
Yeah. Sir Gawain, Green
Yeah,
Knight. Yeah.
yeah. So have fun. Oh, and if you can,
Um,
sleep overnight in Tower London.
yeah. Everybody should do that
Yeah,
once.
I did.
As one does, because Tuesdays are rough, but Wednesdays are great. So,
Still didn't find ghosts. No
uh,
ghosts.
Yeah. So again, like, yeah, we love you, reenactors and stuff. We're not trying to trash you.
No, no, no.
Well, speaking of which, and this probably have to be our last one. So if we didn't answer, again, pack us in with questions, y'all. More the merrier.
Yeah, we plan to do
Because this
these a
this is
lot.
yeah, this is fun. This is fun. Um, Phil Feller Phil Feller asks, has anyone produced a model of some aspect of medieval combat similar to what Philip Sabine and Adrian Goldsworthy have done for the Roman legionary?
Yeah, we got this. This was a question we both looked at and we thought, ooh, where do we go from here? The answer is no. No one has done what Adrian and Phil have for the ancient world. We
Yeah.
could talk about the value of what they do, because the problem with the Middle Ages is with any of these battles, um, is we have to have really trustworthy sources. Now, our first show was on the Battle of Hastings. We've got at least two people right who were there. William of Poitiers, Guy of Amiens. They are both writing. They were on the battlefield. They had very important positions. Certainly, William of Poitiers had very important positions. So we could trust that. You can almost build a model on that. Uh, Crecy, we got 80 sources before written within 50 years. It's
Gracie's
still a little
beautiful.
bit difficult, but we can maybe put model on that. Courtrai got a lot of sources, including eyewitnesses, put model on that. But for example, Battle of Catalonian Plains, the only source we have is written a century later and has lots of problems, as always pointed out. We have no clue what on there. We've got one source for the Battle of Adrianople in 378. That doesn't give us. I mean, he's good. Ammianus Marcellinus, he's good, but can you put a pattern on it? The ancient historians are willing to do this with one or two sources and even wrap wrap this kind of definition of what is accurate or credible. We can't in the Middle Ages that much. Now, that's not saying that somebody could come along and do so, but let's take Tinchbrai for a moment. We have no idea what the formations were. We know some of the people who were in the line. We don't have the numbers. Two different disparate parts of the numbers. Can't really build a model for that battle.
Yeah, and this. All right, I'm gonna take the bait. Kelly's kind of alluded to it here. Um, I question those ancient models, very much so.
Yeah.
I've gotten into some some heat for this, but it's like that's not very reliable. There's not a lot that we can hang our hats on, and I know that's probably going to upset a lot of people, but those come with very, very serious questions, and those questions just as much apply to what we're doing in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
And so no, there isn't an equivalent. And as Kelly's saying, I don't know if there could be. There are attempts to do this in smaller scale. Like here's how the Vikings fought. But even that gets hairy. If you actually know the material, it gets hairy really, really, really quick. Again, it becomes so much about what people want things to be, as opposed to what we can actually defend on solid ground. This is what's happening.
Yeah.
And so it becomes this kind of generalization out of only a few little specificities, that is also just an imaginative construct.
Yes.
And then people then trying to take that, it's an imaginative construct, and now we're going to apply it to actual factual stuff and say, oh, now we can explain it. As historians, that's something that we're kind of uneasy with.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun, and it can be cool for its applicability to tabletop gaming, and all kinds of cool stuff. But on a sort of real world case by case basis, yeah, how do we really actually apply that when it's built on such kind of shaky
Mhm.
foundations? When pulling out any one of those pieces, it's like a house of cards. It kind of falls down.
Yeah.
If you find out that one source was lying, everything just collapses.
Now, let me put an
Uh,
appendix on this because
yeah.
there is a very accurate reconstruction of a campaign, meaning the one that John Haldon and others at I think it was Edinburgh did, not Edinburgh, Liverpool, I believe, who put this together, the campaign that leads the Byzantine army from Constantinople to Manzikert.
Mhm.
And they factor in everything because they know where the food stations are. So it's really a study of logistics. How do they get an army to this position that is the northeastern part of Anatolia? And I think it's very valuable. Problem is, we don't really know what happened on the battlefield. We can't put that together as much as we can put this. But he works with computer experts and gaming situations, and he's got chaos involved in there. I mean, what do you have about these guys who may not be with the rest of the army that go off on their own? What happens to them? It's very valuable because he's tried to factor in everything and all the possibilities there, but it's not on the battle. I mean, this is just getting an army from
Yeah.
point A to point B.
And yeah, we can do this kind of we can reconstruct things, but it's always in these contained windows. The window of a campaign like Kelly's talking about. I think the Battle of Crecy can be very, very closely reconstructed. I mean, in fact, I'm doing so. Like that book's coming out next year. I'm very confident in how I've reconstructed that. Extremely confident
Yeah.
because we have so many sources. We know the ground. We know so very much. But okay, I can reconstruct that really well. Um,
Except you're putting the battle in the non-traditional spot.
Well, yeah, we can talk about that later. But
That'll
but
be on
you know,
next show. Next show.
just hours practically earlier, the Battle of Blanchetaque, with the same folks, right, trying to fight their way across the river, River Somme. Yeah, can't really do that effectively
Yeah.
because we don't have as much to triangulate. So again, our windows in which we can feel fairly certain about what's going on are always limited by something, whether it's our lack of sources or our lack of data on this or that. And we can fill in those gaps, but it's a matter of probabilities. And the more we are shoving in to fill those gaps, the probability of our correctly doing so starts to drop.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, when it comes to medieval combat, I mean, the Middle Ages is 1,000 years of very, very different technologies and very different cultures, lots of variants. Um, there's really no way to model it across that period
Yeah.
with any reliability.
And I'm not as favor. I mean, we're trained as academic historians, so we start. We question everything, and sometimes to our detriment. I'm not in favor of completely throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I have no idea what that ever means, but I'm scared to death somebody might.
Well, we
But
we often throw babies out with
out with the
out the window.
bathwater.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
none of my kids. My youngest just
None,
had a
oh,
birthday. None of my kids.
aw,
Yeah, none of them got thrown out. Maybe on their head. I don't know. Maybe that's my problem. I don't know. Yeah,
dropped.
dropped
That's
on the
sure,
head.
but
Yeah,
not
dropped
thrown.
on there.
Yeah,
But I do think this is value. Keep going. What we look for, we're not looking for truth. I mean,
no,
the old
we'll
Indiana
never get
Jones.
it.
If you want truth, it's in the philosophy department.
Right.
That's not because the philosophers have it. It's because they think they do. No
Yeah.
historian thinks they have the truth. They think they can possibly get to the closest approximation, but we always deal with credibility, deal with the sources and who's right and what's the motive of motive and audience, always a big part.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh
that's what
yeah.
we have to do.
Yeah.
But
We're always
keep
it's a
doing
it's
these
a bit
things.
like Michelangelo. You're cutting away what doesn't belong there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And the more you can cut away what doesn't belong there, the more you're getting a closer picture of truth, right? But it doesn't matter how good Michelangelo does that. The David isn't really a dude. Like it's still a statue. Like it's still not the real thing. It's so close, not the real thing.
Yeah.
You could swear he's breathing, but he's not. It's
No.
a statue.
No.
And that's what we're doing as historians, like Kelly said.
Yeah. And I think I just saw the bartender starting to tap his fingers on the bar. I finished. I got like empty glasses from here to eternity.
Yeah, they're locking the doors. They're locking the doors. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. We enjoyed this. This was fun. This was very good. Please do join us next time. We're going to be talking about the Battle of Crécy. I can't wait because I've been writing a book on it. So I'm like, it's totally on my head. So I keep saying it. Sorry. And as ever, a reminder, this podcast is sponsored by medievalist.net. So the best way to support us, other than buying our individual books, is to join their Patreon at patreon.com/medievalists. That's also the absolutely best place to drop us a line. If you have questions for our next Q&A, you're mad about that thing Kelly said, you're mad about the thing that I said, or you're like, yeah, Mike, you were so right. Kelly's so, no, it's going to be the other way around. Kelly's so right. Mike, you're so wrong. Yeah, that's the place to get in contact with us. All right. Drop us lines and we'll hopefully be able to feature your question on our next Q&A for Bow and Blade.
And comments. So maybe you have to take a few minutes before Crécy if we get some comments from this show and answer them, or at least
be like, all right, yeah,
change our address and phone number. So we stop getting the death threats. But
we'll have to start with the no, I did not in fact ever throw my children out a window.
Speaking of a death threat, we are getting one from the bartender right now.
All right, well, cheers everybody.
See ya.